It's short, some over-the-top emotional shit, but the numbers and sentiment are worth listening to, in my opinion. Well, I love numbers and sentiment. Together, Part 1, My Life is a Lie, How a Broken Benchmark Quietly Broke America. We're going to largely skip markets again because the sweater is rapidly unraveling. This is November 23rd, so yesterday. We're going to largely skip markets again because the sweater is rapidly unraveling in other areas as I pull on threads. Suffice it to say that the market is largely unfolding as I had expected. Credit stress is rising, particularly in the tech sector. Many are now pointing to the rising CDS for Oracle as the deterioration in AI balance sheets accelerates. What does CDS mean? CDS, business. Oh, credit default swaps? It's a financial derivative that allows an investor to swap or offset their credit risk with that of another investor. A protection buyer buys a CDS from a protection seller who agrees to reimburse them if the borrower defaults. Most CDS contracts are maintained via an ongoing premium payment, similar to the regular premiums due to on an insurance policy. A lender who is worried about a borrower defaulting on a loan often uses a CDS to offset or swap that risk. Gotcha. Okay. Many are now pointing to the rising CDS for Oracle as the deterioration in AI balance sheets accelerates. CDS was also just introduced for Meta. It traded at 56, slightly worse than the aggregate IG CDS. I don't know what IG stands for. At 54.5, itself up from 46 as I began discussing this topic. These numbers are in dollars for what they're trading at, I'm guessing. Correlations are spiking as most stocks move in the same direction each day, even as mega cap tech continues to define the market aggregates. Market pricing of correlation is beginning to pick up. Remember, this is the real fear index, and the moving averages are trending upwards. Market pricing of correlation is beginning to pick up. I don't know what's being correlated with what, but okay. And as I predicted, inflation concerns, notably absent from any market-based indication, are again freezing the Fed. The pilots are frozen, understanding that they are in zugzwang. Every choice has unfavorable options. And so now, let's tug on that loose thread. I'm sure many of my left-leaning readers will say, this is obvious, we've been talking about it for years. Yes, many of you have, but you're using language of emotion, pay a living wage, rather than showing the math. My bad for not paying closer attention. Your bad for not showing your work or coming up with workable solutions. Let's rectify it rather than cast blame. How a broken benchmark quietly broke America. I've spent my career distrusting the obvious. Markets, liquidity, factor models, none of these ever felt self-evident to me. Markets are mechanisms of price clearing. Mechanisms have parameters. Parameters distort outcomes. This is the lens through which I learned to see everything, find the parameter, find the distortion, find the opportunity. But there was one number I had somehow never interrogated, one number that I simply accepted the way a child accepts gravity, the poverty line. Okay. I don't know why it seemed apolitical, an actuarial fact, calculated by serious people in government offices, a line someone else drew decades ago that we use to define who is poor, who is middle class, and who deserves help. It was infrastructure, invisible, unquestioned, foundational. This week, while trying to understand why the American middle class feels poorer each year despite healthy GDP growth and low unemployment, I came across a sentence buried in a research paper. The U.S. poverty line is calculated as 3 times the cost of a minimum food diet in 1963, adjusted for inflation. I read it again, 3 times the minimum food budget. I felt sick. And then he threw up all over his desk. The measurement failure. The formula was developed by Molly Orshanksky, an economist at the Social Security Administration. In 1963, she observed that families spent roughly 1/3 of their income on groceries. Since pricing data was hard to come by for many items, for example, housing, if you could calculate a minimum adequate food budget at the grocery store, you could multiply by 3 and establish a poverty line. Orshansky was careful about what she was measuring. In her January 1965 article, she presented the poverty thresholds as a measure of income inadequacy, not income adequacy. If it is not possible to state unequivocally how much is enough, it should be possible to assert with confidence how much, on average, is too little. She was drawing a floor, a line below which families were clearly in crisis. For 1963, that floor made sense. Housing is relatively cheap. A family could rent a decent apartment or buy a home on a single income, as we've discussed. Healthcare was provided by employers and cost relatively little. Childcare didn't really exist as a market. Mothers stayed home, family helped, or neighbors who likely had someone home watched each other's kids. Cars were affordable if prone to breakdowns. With few luxury frills, the neighborhood kids in Votech could fix most problems when they did. College tuition could be covered with a summer job. Retirement meant a pension income, not a pile of 401k assets you had to fund yourself. Orshansky's food times 3 formula was crude, but as a crisis threshold, a measure of too little, it roughly corresponded to reality. A family spending 1/3 of its income on food would spend the other 2/3 on everything else, and those proportions more or less worked. Below that line, you were in genuine crisis. Above it, you had a fighting chance. But everything changed between 1963 and 2024. I mean, that's a long time. Okay. Housing costs exploded. Healthcare became the largest household expense for many families. Employer coverage shrank while deductibles grew. Childcare became a market, and that market became ruinously expensive. College went from affordable to crippling. Transportation costs rose as cities sprawled and public transit withered under government neglect. The labor model shifted. A second income became mandatory to maintain the standard of living that one income formerly provided. But a second income meant childcare became mandatory, which meant 2 cars became mandatory. Or maybe you'd simply be asking for a lot, generationally speaking, because living near your parents helped to defray those childhood costs. The composition of household spending transformed completely. In 2024, food at home is no longer 33% of household spending. For most families, it's 5 to 7%. Housing now consumes 35 to 45%. Healthcare takes 15 to 25%. Childcare for families with young children can eat 20 to 40%. If you keep Orshansky's logic, if you maintain her principle that poverty could be defined by the inverse of food's budget share, but update the food share to reflect today's reality, the multiplier is no longer 3, it becomes 16. Which means if you measured income inadequacy today, the way Orshansky measured it in 1963, the threshold for a family of 4 wouldn't be $31,200. It would be somewhere between $130,000 and $150,000. And remember, Orshansky was only trying to define too little. She was identifying crisis, not sufficiency. If the crisis threshold, the floor below which families cannot function, is honestly updated to current spending patterns, it lands at $140,000. What does that tell you about the $31,200 line we still use? It tells you we are measuring starvation. An imbalance between rich and poor is the oldest and most fatal ailments of all republics. From Plutarch. The real math of survival. The real math of survival. The official poverty line for a family of 4 in 2024 is $31,200. The median household income is roughly $80,000. We have been told implicitly that a family earning $80,000 is doing fine, safely above poverty, solidly middle class, perhaps comfortable. But if Orshansky's crisis threshold were calculated today using her own methodology, that $80,000 family would be living in deep poverty. I wanted to see what would happen if I ignored the official stats and simply calculated the cost of existing. I built a basic needs budget for a family of 4, 2 earners, 2 kids, no vacations, no Netflix, no luxury, just the participation tickets required to hold a hand and raise kids in 2024. Using conservative, national average data, childcare, $32,773. Damn. I know daycare is expensive. Is it really? What is the average cost of daycare U.S.? How much childcare costs state by state in the USA 2025? Childcare in the United States is a lifeline for families, a safe nurturing spot where kids can learn and grow while parents chase their careers. Cost taker for infants in the USA ranges from $400 to $1,500 a month. That's a huge range. A 2022 cost of care survey showed 72% of parents paying 10% of their income for center-based infant care, with 51% spending over 20%. I guess you would 2x it if you're not getting like a bundle discount or whatever. This feels a little high to me. $33,000 for 2 kids, but it's not like I have a basis right now of which to compare that. Also, one thing to note, not to take away from as expensive as it would be, this is only going to be up until the kid is maybe 4 or 5 years old, until they start doing school full time. I think kindergarten is usually a full day, or is it a half day? For kindergarten? I think kindergarten is usually full day. Preschool might just be half day. I feel like my kindergarten was full day. I wonder if I were to look for Miami daycare centers. Child learning centers. That sounds more expensive. Child learning centers. When was my kid born? 2023, we'll say. For 1 to 5 years, $600 a month. If that was 2 kids, it's $1,200. 12,000 and 2,400 is 14,400 a month. For 2 in Miami, what about this one? The Cherry Blossom. This is the #1 ranked school on this website. What do we got? That's 1,000 a month, which would be 2,000 for 2 kids, which would be 24,000. This number seems high. This number must be high. This says using conservative national average data. Conservative? Conservative means on the lower end for 2 kids, 33. I wonder if they're including like everything, like cost of diapers, cost of food, cost of hospital visits, or cost of everything else. Maybe, I don't know. But okay, we'll say, I'm sure it's, I don't know. Housing is 23,267, which would mean your house payment is what is this, about 1,700 a month for everything. Food is 14,700. Man, if you're using 33,000 for childcare, you're using 15,000 for food a year for a family of 4. It's not impossible, but okay. Transportation is 14,828. Why is 14K high for a family of 4? I didn't say it was high. I'm just saying if you're saying childcare, if we're saying conservatively, it's 33,000 a year. This food number seems a lot more realistic than the childcare number. Transportation is 15,000 a year. I'm assuming this includes like car payments and gas and everything. And then healthcare, 10,567 a year. These numbers could be crazy. I've seen this go from 0 to way too much. Just depends. Other essentials, 22,000. I don't know what this means. And then required net income is $118,009. It's insane. What the fuck are the food prices there? Are they only buying lunch packages? I think the average household throws away up to like 50% of their food. It's pretty crazy how difficult it is for people to do grocery stuff, which made me feel better when I read that, but okay. Add federal, state, and FICA taxes. 15K for transportation is easy to reach given there's a lot of 1K per month car payments out there. I feel like the most frustrating part about talking finance is me trying my best to be relatively objective and then a whole bunch of insanely fucking rich people, rich kids in my chat constantly screaming, you're out of touch, you're out of touch, you're out of touch, because they have absolutely no idea what anything in the real world costs. That's my favorite thing in the universe, okay? But yes, that is true. The average car payment is $1,000 a month. King. Where was I? Sorry. Does say, I mean, $300 per week on transportation. Assume $100 a week for gas. That's an $800 car payment unless they're spending way more on gas. I wasn't even saying this number is unrealistic. I was just commenting on some people in chat. For this number here, oh, now we'll find out who's out of touch. Why do you think this number looks so high, motherfuckers? Where are you? Where are my in-touch people who really know the working man struggle? Tell me, motherfuckers. Oh, one guy guessed it. That's the correct prop. That's most likely the correct guess. The most likely correct guess is they have 2 cars because they have 2 working parents. Okay? You privileged ass motherfucking piece of shit. Mom and dad both have to work. Oh, but you know what? I'm out of touch, actually, because you motherfuckers don't even go to work anymore. Y'all fucking work at home, so who the fuck even knows? Mom and dad probably both hybrid work or just work indoors all day, and they don't even leave the fuck... I don't know. But yeah, generally speaking, especially when you have 2 kids, at least in middle-ish class families, you're going to have 2 cars, because, like, picking up the kids from school, driving them off, picking them up, taking them to daycare, doing whatever else, and somebody having to get to and from work all the time is just... Destiny, do you see the obvious problem with this argument, or should I tell you the truth nuke that blows the whole shit out of the water? Well, let me finish it first. Yeah. At federal, state, and FICA taxes of roughly $18,500, and you arrive at a required gross income of $136,500. This is Orshansky's too little threshold updated honestly. This is the floor. The single largest line item is in housing. It's childcare, $32,773. This is the trap. To reach the median household income of $80,000, most families require 2 earners, but the moment you add the second earner to chase that income, you trigger the childcare expense. If one parent stays home, the income drops to $40,000 to $50,000, well below what's needed to survive. If both parents work to hit $100K, they hand over $32,000 to a daycare center. Only for 4 or 5 years, though, right? That's not permanent. But the second earner isn't working for a vacation or a boat. The second earner is working to pay the stranger watching their children so they can go to work and clear $1 to $2K extra a month. It's a closed loop. Well, but that's also, this number is definitely high. And it's assuming you have no family or anybody in the area to help as well. But the housing lie, or why the model is optimistic. Not 6 to 7 years. I don't know. When does a child start daycare? When does kindergarten. My child is 5. They start 5 or 6. So yeah, kindergarten and then first grade, 5 or 6 is childcare the same as daycare? My guess is it's just a newly updated word so people can charge more money for their bullshit. It's like certified pre-owned instead of a used car. But I don't know. Somebody linked childcare costs explained. What do they say? The average annual cost of infant care in Alabama is $7,871. Childcare for a 4-year-old costs $7,268 or $606 each month. Oh, sure. These numbers are believable. This is super believable. I wonder if you're looking... Is Connecticut on average, the entirety of the state? Oh, DC is the most expensive. Damn, are they putting these motherfuckers in brain vats? What the fuck? DC probably has a very high median salary. Maybe, yeah. Measuring all this would be really difficult because, Childcare is unaffordable for typical families in Washington, D.C., but I don't know how many people that work in D.C., I don't know how many of them live in D.C., so that might be hard to measure because a ton of people commute from the surrounding states to go into D.C. to work, right? So there might be people that are, I don't know, usually you drop your kid off at daycare either near work or near home. I don't know what would be cheaper or what they'd be more likely to do, but. Oh, true. For DC, these childcare centers probably are fucking armed to the teeth because you need guards and shit to protect from Democratic Party operatives that come in for taking kids for like their child sacrifices and shit. So you're literally fighting off, whatever Hillary Clinton troops are being sent to your daycare center. The model above allocates, critics will immediately argue that I'm cherry picking expensive cities. They will say $136,500 is the number for San Francisco or Manhattan, not real America. So let's look at real America. The model above allocates $23,267 per year for housing. That breaks down to $1,938 per month. This is the number that serious economists use to tell you that you're doing fine. And my last piece, Are You an American? I analyzed a modest starter home, which turned out to be in Caldwell, New Jersey, the kind of place a teamster could afford in 1955. I went to Zillow to see what it cost to live in that same town if you don't have a down payment and are forced to rent. There are exactly 7 two-bedroom plus units available in the entire town. The cheapest one rents for $2,715 per month. Wait, but that sounds pretty... Nobody likes my city. In Omaha, could we find... Let's check first. Okay, average rent, Omaha, Nebraska. Let's get a quick average on apartments.com. For a 2-bedroom, the average is $1,400 a month. My guess is if I went on Zillow and I started looking for a house to rent or an apartment to rent, I'm sure I could find stuff below average. Let's shop between $1,000 and $2,000. $1,700. Like I can find houses here. This is where I'm from, but I guess it would depend on, in New Jersey, this city that he's talking about, Caldwell, how close is that to New York City? Caldwell, New Jersey. Would anybody working in New York realistically live here? Or Caldwell, New Jersey to Times Square directions. Oh, well, is this assuming no traffic? There's like no traffic right now. You could probably, I guess you could make this if you worked in the city. It'd be about an hour drive. I don't know if people usually drive into New York City to work in like Brooklyn or Queens or whatever, if they would live, like when people live in like New Jersey or whatever to go to work in New York City, are they always working in Manhattan or do they ever work in the other boroughs? Public transport would be an hour and a half. Does this mean nothing came up? Oh, these are homes for sale, for rent. This area seems pretty pricey. Here's one for $1,800 a month. 1 bed, 1 bathroom. I bet this is going to be a rinky-dink place too. Jesus fuck. Oh man, this is where you have to put the cats and dogs out to get the Haitians to fuck off. Oh no. Is this a repurposed? Oh no, that's probably the entrance to the building. Sorry. Unfinished basement. Nice. Why did he have to do Caldwell, New Jersey? Just because that's what they used, or that's what he talked about in this piece? Because like my guess is going to be the prices for all of the areas that like connect you to New York City probably went up a lot more than other areas that would be outside. Like, this is just a guess, right? But what I've always heard is like you live in New Jersey, like people that live in Newark and shit, like a lot of these people commute into New York to work. So like a lot of these, I'm sure that this extended to a lot of these outer suburbs as well, that a lot of people just move here so that they can drive into New York or commute to New York to work. My rental is $2,250 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom with a decent sized lot in Reno. Oh, yeah, Reno is kind of out there in the middle of nowhere, but yeah. Someone said, nah, if you live in Newark, you probably work in Newark. The suburbs north of Newark and the towns west of New York City are where the New York City commuters live. Caldwell is a borough located in northwestern Essex County in the U.S. state of New Jersey, about 60 miles west of New York City and 6 miles northwest of Newark, the state's most populous city. As of the 2020 U.S. Census, the borough's population was 9,027, an increase 15.4% from the 2010 census. Though today, the Caldwell area is considered to be a suburb of both Newark and New York City. The area originally developed as its own individual self-contained community and economy rather than as urban sprawl from a larger city. When it was formed, miles of woods separated downtown Caldwell from Newark or any of its developing suburbs. New Jersey Monthly magazine ranked Caldwell as its 3rd best place to live in its 2010 rankings of the best places to live in New Jersey. There are exactly 7 2-bedroom plus units available in the entire town. The cheapest one rents for $27.15 per month. That's a $777 monthly gap between the model and reality. That's $9,300 a year in post-tax money. To cover that gap, you need to earn an additional $12,000 to $13,000 in gross salary. So when I say the real poverty line is $140,000, I'm being conservative. I'm using optimistic national average housing assumptions. If we plug in the actual cost of living in the zip codes where the jobs are, where rent is $2,700, not $1,900, the threshold pushes past $160,000. One of the issues that I have when people talk about like cost of living is sometimes I don't know if people think like it's very, very, very regional. Depending on how anal you want to get, I can speak with the best level of specificity probably to Omaha, but I know this is true of every city. I don't have to even think about that. If you look at the city of like Omaha, Nebraska, even for people that live in Omaha, you would never generalize rent or you'd never generalize cost of living in Omaha because these areas are all like pretty different from at least from what I remember. I don't know if things have like changed, but like North O, this is where quote unquote the black people lived or whatever. But like North Omaha, especially when you got up here near Ames, I think my uncle lived. I feel like if you lived north of Ames and east of 72nd up there, you're in like some weird shit. There's like, this is like weirdish area. But if you were to go, so that's over there. But if you live like near West Roads, like west of like 90th, these are like better areas. Regency here, this is where Warren Buffett lives or did live. I'm pretty sure he still has a house here. These are some of your wealthiest homes in Omaha right here. The West Side District, I think is like upper middle class, is like pretty good. Like even within this city, there's like, I feel like you can get significant differences of just like going like 30, 40 blocks away. I don't know why I'm pointing all this out. If you haven't been here, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying it's weird when somebody says, like, even for the whole city, when people like guesstimate rents and stuff, if you move to different neighborhoods in the same city, you can get like significantly different rents and significantly different cost of living for a bunch of associated stuff. But that's okay. All that to say, whatever. Suck my dick. To get an idea on how realistic these models are, maybe you can do an example budget for Omaha or Miami with sources. Oh, maybe we'll do that after. I don't know. So when I say the real poverty line is 140K, I'm being conservative. I'm using optimistic national average housing. Okay, the market isn't just expensive, it's broken. 7 units available in a town of thousands. That isn't a market. That's a shortage masquerading as an auction. There definitely is like housing shortages, like we need more. But you're looking at a market that seems heavily restrictive. Why not go to a different market? I know that's like impossible, sorry. And that $2,715 rent check buys you zero equity. In the 1950s, the monthly housing cost was a forced savings account that built generational wealth. Today, it's a subscription fee for a roof. You are paying a premium to stand still. Okay. The hedonic lie why a phone costs $200 and not $58. Economists will look at my $140,000 figure and scream about hedonic adjustments. Heck, I will scream at you about them. They are valid attempts to measure the improvement in quality that we honestly value. I will tell you that comparing 1955 to 2024 is unfair because cars today have airbags, homes have air conditioning, and phones are supercomputers. I will argue that because the quality of the good improved, the real price dropped. And I would be making a category error. We are not calculating the price of luxury. We are calculating the price of participation. Oh, this is what I was going to say when I wrote this. There's something to be said for, because I had this thought, but I don't know how you would figure it out. The level one, this is the assertion that I give. The level one assertion is that, the standard of living is improved even if you're buying the same thing, right? A TV today is better than a TV yesterday. And then, but the takeaway from that is like, okay, so what you're saying is that if people just bought the TV from yesterday with today's wages, they would actually be doing way better off. And then the response to that is, yes, of course they would be, because now they'd have more money and they could just buy a ton of shit, just older stuff. But then I think the counter or whatever to that is, while that might be true, if $100 plasma TV, they were like a $500 plasma TV from the year 2000 that you could buy today for 2025 for $100 or $50, a fucking plasma screen, is going to feel worse than that same TV in 2020 or in the year 2000 because of what the standards are around you. So if I were to get a $500 TV from the year 2000, let's say it was more expensive, I couldn't afford it, but I could buy that same TV, 20 years later for $100 or $50. I could get it and I'm saving a ton of money, but it doesn't even really feel worth the $50 now, let alone, whatever. It doesn't feel worth it because nobody's using that thing anymore. So you just feel like a fucking loser. But then I don't know what the solution is to that other than to tell everybody, all you motherfuckers need to stop buying new shit. or you just ban new shit from being in the market, you know? Also, old stuff doesn't actually get cheaper. It's just not produced anymore. So you're going to secondhand. Kind of. I mean, old stuff is definitely cheaper and could definitely be manufactured for cheaper. But the problem is the demand doesn't exist for it because people always want the newest stuff, you know? We're not calculating the price of luxury. We're calculating the price of participation. To function in 1955 society, to have a job, call a doctor, and be a citizen, you needed a telephone line. That participation ticket costs $5 a month. I forget if you were the one that said this, but the idea resonated with me. Essentially, that it used to be the case that life was cheap and luxury items were expensive, and now it seems like the other way around. Like, you can go to Costco and get a 70-inch TV for $350, but rent feels expensive. Sure. Adjusted for standard inflation, that $5 today that $5 should be $58 today, but you cannot run a household in 2024 on a $58 landline. To function today, to factor authenticate your bank account, to answer work emails, to check your child's school portal, which is now digital only, you need a smartphone plan and home broadband. I mean, not to be a dick, but because I'm not saying people don't deserve cell phones, but like, you don't need I don't think you need a smartphone plan to do this. Can you download Authy on your computer? I'm sure that there are authentication programs that you can get that aren't just on your cell phone, right? There must be two-factor authentication programs that you can get on your desktop. I'm sure there are. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Even if there aren't, you could just get, even if there aren't, you can just have a phone and use your Wi-Fi, right? But the cost of that participation ticket for a family of four is not $58, it's $200 a month. The economists say, but look at the computing power you get. I say, look at the computing power I need. The utility I'm buying is connection to the economy. The price of that utility didn't keep pace with inflation. It tripled relative to it. I ran this participation audit across the entire 1955 budget. I didn't ask, is the car better? I asked, what does it cost to get to work? Healthcare in 1955, Blue Cross family coverage was roughly $10 a month, $115 in today's dollars. Today, the average family premium is over $1,600 a month. That's 14x inflation. Taxes in 1955, the Social Security tax was 2.0% on the first $4,200 of income. The maximum annual contribution was $84. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $960 a year. Today, a family earning the median $80,000 pays over $6,100. That's 6x the inflation. It's kind of weird because, I mean, Social Security you technically get back in retirement too, right? But okay. 1955, this cost was zero because the economy supported a single earner model. Today it's $32,000. That's an infinite increase in the cost of participation. The only thing that actually tracked official CPI was food. Everything else, the inescapable fees required to hold a job, stay healthy, and raise children, inflated at multiples of the official rate when considered on a participation basis. Yes, these goods and services are better. I would not trade my 65-inch 4K TV mounted flat on the wall for a 25-inch CRT dominating my living room, but I don't have a choice either. The Valley of Death, why $100,000 is the new poor. Once I established at $136,500 is the real break-even point, I ran the numbers on what happens to a family climbing the ladder toward that number. What I found explains the vibes of the economy better than any CPI print. Our entire safety net is designed to catch people at the very bottom, but it sets a trap for anyone trying to climb out. As income rises from $40,000 to $100,000, benefits disappear faster than wages increase. I call this the Valley of Death. Let's look at the transition for a family in New Jersey. The view from $35,000, the official poor. At this income, the family is struggling, but the state provides a floor. They qualify for Medicaid, free healthcare. They receive SNAP, food stamps. They receive heavy childcare subsidies. Their deficits are real but capped. The cliff at $45,000. Family earns a $10,000 raise. Good news. No, at this level, the parents lose Medicaid eligibility. Suddenly, they must pay premiums and deductibles. Income gain, $10,000. Expense increase, $10,567. Net result, they are poorer than before. The effective tax on this mobility is over 100%. Does Medicaid, there's definitely like an issue with this that I agree. Does Medicaid, does this like kick in at different levels? Is it scaling or is it like a hard cliff? Medicaid qualification. Department determines eligibility for low-income children and family programs in the institutional care program. Department of Children, each program has its own income and asset requirements. I don't know if I can explain this well, but even if so I just asked if there's a hard cliff versus like a scaling thing, because a hard cliff sucks. Hard cliffs suck because You know how we make fun of people who are like, oh, like I made $9,990 last year, and then this year I made $10,000, and now I'm in a higher tax bracket, so all my income gets taxed more. And it's like, no, retard, that's not how it works. When you have hard cliff cutoffs for certain types of aid, that is how it works. Like, oh, I earned a little bit over the cap, and now I'm on the hook for some huge expense. I would have been better off earning less money. Even if you do scale things, though, there's, how can I explain this? I don't know if I can do this. Even if you scale things, there's an effect where like the next dollar you earn, there's, what would you call this? Like an effective tax increase or something because of how your money is working. I'm not going to be able to explain this. It's bad. That's all I'll say. I don't know how to explain it. If this was your income, if this was so like we never want to see, ideally, generally, you don't really want to see benefits that look like this, where like, oh, this is the benefit you get. And then it's like, oh, and then it falls off at this income level. Like ideally, there'd be some minimum threshold, and then it would start to like scale off kind of. But there's a weird phenomenon where if we measure our taxes like this or whatever, we're at different income brackets, it scales up. There's this like particularly harsh field where you're earning this much money, you earn, you pay some very, very low in taxes, and it's even lower because you get tax credit stuff, and you have all this welfare that kind of helps. And then you get into this level, and then you start earning more. But every new dollar you earn here is like 100%. You earn every dollar. It's like, oh, we get lots of dollars. $1 earned is another dollar earned. That's some good ass shit because you've got all these kind of like benefits kicking in. But once you get here, well, now as your benefits start to slide off, well, my next dollar earned here is only like 95% as good as the dollar over here. And the next dollar earned here might only be like 90% as good as the dollar here. And then once you start to get to these areas, like, oof, my dollars that I'm earning now are like 40% as good or 20% as good because because as these start to scale off, you're kind of like losing this kind of multiplier effect. And then by the time you get way down here, now he's presenting this Medicaid thing as a cliff. And it might be actually, I don't know as much about Medicaid. It might be the case that a dollar earned here is actually worth like less than 0%. It's almost like a negative dollar versus like the dollars that you were earning here compared to these. Now, compared to like each last dollar, it's still technically better than not earning it. But you get into these weird areas, even when you even when you kind of like try to scale these things off to prevent these harsh cliffs, every next dollar earned here is still worth quite a bit less because of, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if I explained that well, but... could we make a semi-cliff cutoff for Medicaid where after 40K or something, Medicaid is no longer free but requires you to pay in some amount? The amount would be smaller than private insurance, but instead is calculated as a percentage of your previous year's AGI. So I don't know what all Medicaid qualifies you for, but in my opinion, these types of phenomena are, in my opinion, these types of phenomena are the best reason to have different types of like UBI. So like, let's say that we decide that if you earn less than $40,000 a year, then you're entitled to like Medicaid benefits that average out to, we'll say $10,000 a year in Medicaid benefits, or $5,000, probably less than that, because most people aren't going to draw that much, right? In that case, rather than fuck all this shit, rather than all of the administrative burden, there's an administrative burden, and there's also a human cost burden in that like the poor people that are working now have to navigate all this. Other industries will pop up to help them navigate it, which are extractive because they're not really, the benefit that they're providing is just helping you navigate the government benefits that you're already entitled to as a U.S. citizen, which kind of sucks in my opinion. I don't think that feels good. And it's just like, and so you're going to have people who need these benefits and who are entitled to them, but then they don't even get them because they don't know how to navigate it, or they don't pay the right person to help them out. It's just bullshit. I think this should all just be UBI. Like, give them a flat $5,000 a month check for everybody in society, and then fuck it. And then just fuck it. So we don't have Medicaid anymore, but everybody just gets this bare minimum thing or whatever that's for healthcare costs, and then that's it. I feel like that this is like a strong argument in an area here. Reminds me a lot of that Matt Brunig-Bridges conversation you guys had. Yeah, that's actually what I'm drawing from. He convinced me of that, I think, a lot, where rather than do all this bullshit, just give the $5,000 to everybody and just say fuck it, and then just move on to the next thing. And you eliminate all of this bullshit. Not to be mean or fucking race realist or whatever the fuck else, but like keep in mind too that when you're talking about Medicaid, you're talking about your poorest people in society. You're probably talking about your least educated, lowest IQ, whatever people in society, right? You want them to navigate all this shit? Like, oh, hey, Mr. and Mrs., below the poverty line people who both of you failed high school and all this. Can you go ahead and check out this like 78-page thing to verify? Like, fuck, this is fucked. There's no fucking way. Fuck all this shit. It's too much. This is too much, I think. How can UBI replace Medicaid? $5,000 a month will not cover getting cancer or something. I'm sure there's like you could just like have an account for basic healthcare stuff or whatever. Most people aren't getting cancer. That's an exceptionally rare thing. that's a like we can have some administrative thing for that or whatever. What do you do when they waste all their money on drugs and now are fucked health wise and now are stuck in the hospital with access to no money to pay for healthcare? I mean, what do you do now on Medicaid if they waste their money on drugs and it's the same shit now. It's just with more administrative burden. What do you mean? Isn't there something to be said for the lack of lateral maneuverability with Medicaid? It might be a feature instead of a bug. If you give them UBI, I'm sorry. I thought I said this. Maybe I didn't say this clear enough. You could have like a healthcare account. Like, you have like health savings accounts or whatever. You just get like a $5,000 a month, not a month. You get like a whatever annual. You just get like an HSA that the government deposits money into and you can use it on healthcare related things, Would this not essentially be the same thing? The best. Oh, the negative income tax? Maybe.
The best, or should I say the least bad solution I have ever...
Is he really this one-dimensional? Or, I'm sorry, I'm just making a huge assumption. Talking to a libertarian. We need to do welfare. No, we should never do welfare. We can't do welfare. You're not entitled to anybody else's money. True. You know you hate taxes? Yes, I hate taxes because I'm a libertarian. How about if instead of welfare, what if we did like a negative income tax? That sounds awesome because I hate taxes and it's a negative tax. Just for poor people? Sure.
There's something called...
Sorry, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not it. I don't know.
The best, or should I say the least bad solution I have ever been able to devise is something called the negative income tax. This is the idea that we should get rid of a large part of the welfare bureaucracy and of the demeaning rules, that we should help people who are poor fundamentally by giving them money. With the positive income tax, you're entitled to a certain amount of personal exemptions and deductions, and above that amount you pay tax. But suppose you have no income. Under a negative income tax, a fraction of your unused exemptions would be paid to you by the government, guaranteeing at least a minimum income. If you earned something, you'd still get a fraction of your unused exemptions, and you'd end up better off. As your earnings rose, the supplement to your income would become smaller and smaller until your earnings equaled your exemptions. At that point, you'd break even, neither paying tax nor receiving a subsidy. It's not an ideal system. It's not the system we might have liked to get into, but it's a system which would have the effect of eliminating the separation of the society into those who receive and those who pay. A separation that tends to destroy the whole social...
So the negative income tax was one solution, but I think it still runs into that graph problem that I pointed out, that as you earn more money, the next dollar earned is like kind of worth less than the prior dollar earned. So I think just doing the flat disbursement to people might work out better. What is this guy saying? Good luck on your journey and better understanding. You are 20 plus years behind. Glad to see you finally understood there is more than just politics. Ban me. I'm logging out. Stay mad. Okay, the cliff at $45,000, healthcare trap. The family earns a $10,000 raise. Good news. No, at this level, the parents lose Medicaid eligibility. Cliff at $65,000, childcare trap. This is the breaker. The family works harder. They get promoted to $65,000. They are now solidly working class, but at roughly this level, childcare subsidies vanish. They must not pay the full market rate for daycare. Income gain plus $20,000. Wait, Destiny, with the cliff issue, how is it different from going into a new tax bracket for people making more money? Why is it an issue at the lower income end, but not at the higher income end of the scale? Because as you get into new tax brackets, the increase in like percentage tax you're paying on the next dollar goes up like a few percentage points. But when you're talking about subsidies falling off, that percentage of the next dollar earned is much more severely affected. I don't know if that makes sense. So like if I'm losing $10,000 of benefit going from $40,000 to $50,000 in income, if I can imagine I lose a $10,000 subsidy there, you've basically taxed every new dollar from that 40 to 50K income. You've basically taxed all those dollars at 100%, which is an infinite increase over whatever it's a greater increase on whatever you were taxing them before. Whereas for tax brackets, when you move into the next tax bracket, you're just taxing the next dollar at, 5 points higher or 2 points, I don't know, depending on what bracket you're moving through, than you would have been in the last bracket, right? I imagine the impact of those dollars on the person in question is regularly different depending on where they are on the scale. Maybe, sure, but I don't know what that, actually, I don't know what that response was. I don't know how that was responsive to what I said. But at roughly this level, childcare subsidy, when you run the net income numbers, a family earning $100,000 is effectively in a worse monthly financial position than a family earning $40,000. I feel like this is one of those areas where you have to do like I think this is one of those areas where you have to step back and do like a sanity check on your numbers. Like, do we really feel this? Is this actually what's happening? Given the ability to earn $100,000 a year for a family of four, would you really choose to earn $40,000 a year as a family of four in the same market, in the same house, in the same everything? I don't know if this doesn't feel like it passes a basic sanity check to me. At $40,000, you are drowning, but the state gives you a life vest. At $100,000, you are drowning, but the state says you are a high earner and ties an anchor to your ankle called market price. In option terms, the government has sold a call option to the poor, but they've rigged the gamma. As you move closer to the money, self-sufficiency, the delta collapses. For every dollar of effort you put in, the system confiscates 70 to 100 cents. No rational trader would take that trade, yet we wonder why labor force participation lags. It's not a mystery, it's math. Also, nobody's doing this math. There's nobody in the economy is thinking, I'm earning $40,000 a year right now. I'm going to take a new job that earns $100,000 a year. But if I take that job, then I'm going to calculate A, B, C, D, E, F, G benefits and differential tax treatment. Yeah, but generally speaking, your next dollar is worth less than your last is not an issue and is actually how progressive tax systems work, right? You're simply saying that your next dollar shouldn't take your last dollar away. Well, I'm saying that like if your next dollar is worth less than the last in huge jumps, that might be a bad thing. Like if we had a tax bracket that went from like 30% and then the next bracket was like 90%, we'd probably say like, oh, this kind of a jump doesn't feel very good. It actually seems like I'm highly disincentivized to work past, whatever the next bracket is, The physics of ruin, the phase change. The most dangerous lie of modern economics is mean reversion. Economists assume that if a family falls into debt or bankruptcy, they can simply save their way back to the average. Is there any economist that thinks that? Or financial planner that thinks that? I feel like debt and bankruptcy end up always becoming vicious cycles. I think it takes quite a bit to get your way. I feel like every single financial planner, investor, or like all like the YouTube channels or the people that give advice on how to escape debt always like treat it as like a pretty big cycle that's difficult to escape from. But okay. They are confusing volatility with ruin. Falling below the line isn't like cooling water. It's like freezing in it. It is a phase change. When a family hits the barrier, eviction, bankruptcy, or default, they don't just have less money. They become economically inert. They are barred from the credit system for 7 to 10 years. They are barred from the prime rental market, landlord screens. They are barred from employment in sensitive sectors. With bankruptcy, how clean it is today, I think it's pretty normal on average to come back. I don't know about that. I feel like the biggest issue with bankruptcy is probably not the bankruptcy itself. It's that if you're in a situation where you're having to declare bankruptcy, like you might already be a person who's going to have a hard time making it back, In physics, it takes massive latent heat to turn ice back into water. In economics, the energy required to reverse a bankruptcy is exponentially higher than the energy required to pay a bill. A $140,000 line matters because it is the buffer against the phase change. If you're earning $80,000 with $79,000 in fixed costs, you're not stable. You're super cold water. One shock, a transmission failure, a broken arm, and you freeze instantly. The lockdown arbitrage, proof of concept. If you need proof that the cost of participating and the cost of working is the primary driver of this fragility, look at the COVID lockdowns. In April 2020, the U.S. personal savings rate hit a historic 33%. Economists attributed this to stimulus checks, but the math tells a different story. What? I didn't see that at all. Attributed the savings rate to stimulus checks? Everything that I read said that the savings rate was attributed to the fact that the household outlays dramatically decreased. People were spending way less money on entertainment and going out because a lot of places were just closed or just people didn't leave the house. Everything I read said that, but maybe there were other things that I just didn't read or didn't see, I guess. I've never seen this. Economist said that the savings rate was so high because we got one stimulus check. I've never seen this. I don't know. My gut tells me to not believe that, but okay. During lockdown, the valley of death was temporarily filled. Childcare was suspended because kids were home. True. Commuting suspended. Work lunches / clothes suspended. Yeah, your outlays, your household outlays, all of these things went away. For a median family, the cost of participation in the economy is roughly $50,000 a year. When the economy stopped, then that tax was repealed. Families earning $80,000 suddenly felt rich, not because they earned more, but because the leak in the bucket was plugged. For many, income actually rose thanks to the $600 a week unemployment boost. Well, yeah, but also because a lot of people were getting more, I think, in unemployment than they even earned in their ordinary jobs. The unemployment and the stimulus and everything was pretty massive. And they didn't even have to work, right? So you're like, income actually rose thanks to the $600 a week in unemployment. Yeah, but also because it's not just that you're getting unemployment, it's that you're getting paid and you're not working, right? But even for those whose income stayed flat, they felt rich because many costs were avoided. Yeah, and they didn't have to work. They just had free time. They were just given money and not working. It's unemployment. When the world reopened, the costs returned, but now inflated by 20%. The rage we feel today is the hangover from that brief moment where the American option was momentarily back in the money. Those with formal training in economics have dismissed these concerns by and large. Inflation is the rate of change in the price level. These poor, deluded souls were outraged at that price level. Tut-tut, can't have deflation. How can we? We promise you'll like that even less. But the price level does mean something too. If you're below the actual poverty line, you are suffering constant deprivation, and a higher price level means you can get even less in aggregate. This mathematical value explains the rage we see in the American electorate, specifically the animosity the working poor, the middle class, feel towards the actual poor and immigrants. Economists and politicians look at this anger and call it racism or lack of empathy. They are missing the mechanism. Altruism is a function of surplus. It's easy to be charitable when you have excess capacity. It's impossible to be charitable when you're fighting for the last bruised banana. The family earning $65,000, the family that just lost their subsidies and is paying $32,000 for daycare and $12,000 for healthcare deductibles, is hyper aware of the family earning $30,000 and getting subsidized food, rent, childcare, and healthcare. I don't believe this. This doesn't, in my mind, doesn't pass a basic smell test, but they say the neighbor at the grocery store, they see the neighbor at the grocery store using an EBT card while they put items back on the shelf. They see the immigrant family receiving emergency housing support while they face eviction. Do these people even live in the same areas or apartments or neighborhoods or houses? They are not seeing poverty. They are seeing people getting for free the exact things that they are working 60 hours a week to barely afford. And even worse, if they don't see these things firsthand, they are being shown them. The anger isn't about the goods. It's about the breach of contract. The American deal was that effort approximated security. Effort brought your hope strike closer, but because the real poverty line is 140,000, effort no longer yields security or progress. It brings risk, exhaustion, and debt. When you're drowning and you see the lifeguard throw a life vest on the person treading water next to you, a person who isn't swimming as hard as... If you need visual proof of this benchmark error, look at the charts that economists love to share on social media to prove that vibes are wrong and the economy is great. You've likely seen this chart. It shows that the American middle class is shrinking, not because people are getting poor, but because they're moving up into $150,000 plus bracket. The economists look at this and share. Look, they say in 1967, only 5% of families made over $150K. Now 34% do. We are a nation of rising aristocrats. The percentage of U.S. households with a total income greater than $150K has increased as the middle class has been shrinking. But look at that chart through the lens of the real poverty line. If the cost of basic self-sufficiency for a family of four is $140K, then that top light blue tier isn't upper class, it's the survival line. This chart doesn't show the 30... Okay, I'm good. Stop! I don't know why we read this article. Fuck you, Metalwood. Okay, we read that article about the poverty line should be $140,000 based on that guy's weird calculations. Apparently an economist has written a response to this. A recent essay by Michael W. Greene makes a very bold claim that the poverty line should not be where it is currently set, about $31,200 for a family of four, but should be much higher. He suggests somewhere around $140K. The essay was originally posted on his Substack, but has now gone somewhat viral and has been reposted at the Free Press. Note that the actual poverty threshold for a family of four with two kids is $31,812, a minor difference from Mr. Greene's figure, so not worth dwelling on much, but this is a constant frustration in his essay. He rarely tells us where his numbers come from. I think there are at least three major errors Mr. Greene makes in the essay. One, he drastically underestimates how much income American families have. Two, he drastically overstates how much spending is necessary to support a family because he uses average spending figures and treats them as minimum amounts. And he obsesses over the official poverty measure since it was originally based on the cost of food in the 1960s and ignores that census already has a new poverty measure which takes into account food, shelter, clothing, and utility costs, the supplement poverty measure. I won't go into great detail about the official poverty measure, as I would recommend you read Scott Winship on this topic. Needless to say, today the OPM, or some multiple of it, is primarily used today for anti-poverty program qualification, not to actually measure how well families are doing today. If we really bump the poverty line about to $140,000, tons of Americans would now qualify for things like Medicaid, SNAP, and federal housing assistance. Does Mr. Greene really want 2/3 of Americans to qualify for these programs? I doubt it. Instead, he seems to be interested in measuring how well off American families are today, so am I. Well, this sentence kind of misses the point. I don't think you would say, do you really want 2/3 of Americans to qualify for these programs? I think his response would be, well, what I'm saying is that the economic situation is so dire that 2/3 of Americans would qualify for them, right? I feel like he's mixing this up a little bit, but let's dive into the numbers. Measuring income. Mr. Greene's essay is about income and spending. He mentions income 26 times in the essay, but he never, so far as I can tell, links to any measure of income. The only hard number he references from any data source is median household income, which he mentioned several times as $80,000. Note, again, this number isn't quite right. It was $83,730 in 2024, but median household income probably isn't the best number for his analysis. Households include people living alone, elderly couples, and various non-family structures. His essay primarily focuses on a family of 4, 2 earners, 2 kids, and we have some measures of income that come more closely to approximating this type of family, and they are all much greater than $80,000. That's probably true, actually. Median household income would be pretty worthless because a retired couple would count towards that, but they would probably pull the median down a bit, or a family of, or just like individuals living together. Or no, I'm sorry, not individuals living together. Just an individual living on their own might also drag that number down a bit. But they don't necessarily need higher incomes because they're not supporting a family of 4 or something, right? Maybe? That's a good point. For example, a very readily available number he could have used is median family income, which was a much higher $105,800 in 2024. But that's all families, regardless of whether they have kids or how many earners they have. For married couples with children, regardless of number of earners, is a much higher figure, $132,959 in 2024. God damn, really? I wonder, we're still reading. I shouldn't accuse him of bias, but I wonder if, like, for married couples, I wonder how many couples together with children who aren't married there are versus couples that are married with children. But for families with 2 earners, median income is even higher, $142,200 in 2024. I can't find in the publicly calculated census tables a number for married couple dual earner families with children, but it would likely be in this $140,000 range, if not higher. So we can already see that $140,000 is not some mythical number that is unattainable by American families for the type of family Mr. Greene is interested in. Half of the families are already at this income level. True, that does mean that half are already below it, but the $80,000 figure he keeps using as a baseline isn't anywhere near the right number. When he says things like, if one parent stays home, the income drops to $40,000 or $50,000 from the supposed $80,000 baseline, he's drastically understating the financial situation of a typical family. Again, Mr. Greene, to reach the median household income, Destiny, the married couple is going to be more weighted towards older people because younger people marriage rates are extremely low now compared to previous decades. While that might be true, it can't be weighted too much because, like, if your children are 40, they probably don't live at home anymore, right? So the married couple with children ideally shouldn't be there, right? No, the median income for a male that works full-time in the U.S. was $75,440 in 2024. Is that true? Why did I feel like this number was so much lower? Did I get brainwashed by the red pill spaces? Full-time, year-round, all workers by median income and sex. Woo, yeah. Male, median income. No, the median income for a male that works full-time in the U.S. was $75,440. Oh, this is going to be all men, so this includes married men and everything else as well, right? That's still higher than I thought it was, though. Damn. Okay. Yeah. Stay losing, women. Sorry, just kidding. So many narratives about American decline claim that one male income isn't enough to get by these days, but remember, anytime you see that median household income figure, this is basically what the median male earns, not what a dual income family earns. For the median female working full-time, median income is $61,020. If the median male and female full-time worker are married, they earn $136 for $160, just adding those two medians together. Once again, right in the range that Mr. Greene thinks is necessary to support a family of 4. You couldn't necessarily just add these together for reasons, but we're just kind of approximating or whatever, maybe. Mr. Greene has understated a typical family income by something like 70%. Knowing this fact alone would, I think, cause him to reconsider his entire essay, but it's worse than that. He also overstates the amount of spending required to support a family. Family spending. Mr. Greene uses what he calls conservative national average data to construct a basic needs budget for our family of 4. He lists spending data for childcare, housing, food, transportation, healthcare, and other essentials, undefined, but actually his 3rd largest category, then throws in an income tax estimate to get a figure of $136,500 as the basic needs budget. He also then just refers to this number as $140K throughout most of the rest of the essay. Again, he lists no sources for any of these numbers. I could probably track most of them down, but that would actually miss the main error he makes. He's using average spending levels as minimum spending levels needed to support a family. But the average spending levels probably represent a lot of spending that is not necessary to support a family, but is merely a reflection of how wealthy we are today. Take food spending. The essay says the family needs to spend $14,717 on food as a minimum. Oh, that's true too, using that as a minimum. Damn, $1,000 a month? This number probably comes from the Consumer Expenditure Survey, which shows a family of four spent $14,325 on food in 2023 and maybe adjusted it up by food inflation since then. But that's how much a family actually spent, which will include, for example, at least some discretionary dining out experiences. Groceries are just 60% of this total. What's a better number? Thankfully, the USDA puts out regular estimates of the cost of a thrifty food plan, and their reference family is 2 adults with 2 kids, perfect for our purposes. Unfortunately, in 2021, the Biden admin increased the cost of this thrifty food plan by about 21%, that is above the cost of food inflation, so I'm not totally confident in this number anymore. Nonetheless, the figure can be useful. The USDA says it is currently $1,002 per month, or about $12,000 per year for our family of 4. Prior to the Biden revision, that figure was $687 per month in May 2021, which if we adjust for grocery inflation since then comes to $850 per month, or about $10,200 per year. So $10,000 to $12,000 per year is probably a better number rather than almost $15,000 in Greene's essay. You might say this is only a few $1,000s, but notice he is overstating food costs by 22 to 47%. If all the costs are being overstated by 1/3 or so, it no longer takes $118,000 of post-tax income to support the family, but closer to $90,000, already putting us well below median family income. Are all of the costs as overstated as the food costs? I won't dive into each category. I can't even begin to dive into the big $22,000 other essentials category because we don't know what it is, but let's talk about housing for a moment. He puts that annual housing cost at $23,267 or $1,938 per month. Is it possible to house a family of 4 for less than that? Again, clearly it is. First, we can note that the median gross rent in the U.S. was $1,487 in 2024. Does that include, that's for everybody though, right? Like single people, families. Of course, most Americans aren't renters, but rent is a useful figure to use because it generally resets annually at market rates, whereas homeowners are somewhat insulated, so averages, including long-term homeowners, aren't especially useful. And we don't need to add in things like property taxes or maintenance. The rent already reflects those. If that number is reasonable, then housing costs have been overstated by 30%. Can a family of 4 house themselves for under $1,500 a month? Probably not in New York City. Well, I feel like he's making kind of a big. That chart had figures for size of home. Wait, did it? Hold on, sorry. Units and structure. Total housing units. Hold on. What would I look for? Rooms? Bedrooms, maybe, I guess? So we could say 2 or 3 bedrooms. If I wanted to see the average rent, what would I be? Wait, I don't even see where the rent value is listed. Q equals rent. Do I have to download the table to see? Maybe? Okay, whatever. I feel like this median gross rent is going to be lower than maybe we'd want it to be, but like it's probably going to be higher if you need like 2 or 3 bedrooms for a family of 4. The rent already reflects those. If the number is reasonable, housing costs can family afford? Okay, probably not LA, but if we look into Chicago, the central city of America's 3rd largest MSA, what does MSA stand for? We see almost 200 homes for rent that are at least 3 bedrooms and under $1,500. 3 bedrooms. Damn, what the fuck? Oh, metro-sized area, gotcha. Wait, show me pictures. 3 bedroom. $1,500 a month, Chicago. If we look at Dallas-Fort Worth without going to the outer suburbs, America's 4th largest MSA, we can find there are currently 350 homes for rent under $1,500 with at least 3 bedrooms on Zillow. Are all of these rentals perfect? No. Is Zillow a comprehensive listing of rentals? Also no. So the fact that there are currently hundreds of rentals available in 2 of America's largest metro areas that could house a 4-person family for less than $1,500, clearly the $1,900 figure is too high. If we expand the search filter to $1,900, we get 760 rentals in Chicago and a whopping 2,000 DFW. I mean, the fact that guy, I think there's always, I always say this, remember, there's weird stuff when it comes to like, when data gets too specific or too broad, you should feel like the person is lying to you unless they justify that. Like if somebody says like, I happen to know that women, I know that women are worse at video games. And the reason why I know this is because when we look at the total amount of female to male players on the ladder for Angry Birds in 2024, from the ages of 16 to 21 and a half, we can see that men right? When you get like really specific figures, or when people give you figures that are way too broad, then it's like, okay, wait, hold on. The fact that guy was trying to say that housing was unaffordable, regardless of whether it is or isn't, but he's like, we're going to look at this single sub-city neighborhood thing in New Jersey. He's like, why? Really? I thought that was kind of weird. Before leaving the discussion of housing prices, I should emphasize I'm not trying to minimize the housing affordability question. As I've written about numerous times in the past, housing has become much less affordable in recent years. But at the same time, we need not overstate how much it costs. You can certainly pay $2,000 a month if you want, but in most of America, you could house a family of 4 for much less than that. One final cost I will discuss is childcare. I won't quibble too much with the number he uses, about $16,000 per child per year, other than to say that childcare costs vary significantly by state. Only a handful of states have an average of $16,000 or more. But the most important thing about childcare costs is that these are temporary. Yeah, because they last for about anywhere from 4 to 6 years, right? Thank goodness, most kids will only be in full-time daycare for a maximum of 5 years. So for a 2-child household, this is 10 years. of full-time daycare costs, or about $160,000 total over the kids' younger years. A median income family makes that much income in just 3 calendar years. It doesn't make sense to put $32,773 into a permanent basic needs budget of a 2-child family, since it is a temporary expense, and it's also wrong to say, as Greene does, that the second earner is working to pay the stranger watching their children so they can go to work and clear $1 to $2K extra a month. The median female is making double the cost of daycare, and yes, while she pays taxes, there are also tax credits, and they're only bearing that full cost for 5 full calendar years, compared with a working career of perhaps 40 years of the second earner's salary. I'm not saying everyone should choose daycare and 2 earners, but as with housing, Mr. Greene is radically overstating the full impact of this choice on the household budget. Finally, Mr. Greene seems to take a lot of issue with the official poverty measure. He's certainly not the first person. Again, read Woodship's essay on this topic for more of the history of this measure. Since Mr. Greene is not the first to complain about the OPM, it will not surprise you to learn that there are many alternative measures of poverty that have been developed over the years. A very well-known one, also produced by the Census Bureau and even included in all the same reports as the OPM, is a newer measure called the Supplemental Poverty Measure. The SPM overcomes most of the criticism of the OPM. First, it's not merely linked. Okay. Oh, the SPM is better than the OPM. And that it has those housing costs vary by geographic area, unlike the OPM, which is a single number for the entire nation. San Jose is right next to San Francisco, right? Am I making that up? Okay, nice.
So the thing I keep thinking about is, was it worth it to be happy for a little bit? Even though it ended up sad? Or would it have been better if the whole thing never happened?